Good evening, everybody. Can't see all of you, but I know you're there. And welcome to this evening's event from Herefordshire Green Network's Building Sense, Creating Comfort and Cutting Carbon. I'm just going to ask my, I don't know actually, my co-hosts Claire and Gordon, are you able to admit people? I'm not sure that you are, so I better keep an eye on that. Fine. Just letting a few more people in. Now, I would like to just remind people that, as usual, we are recording this event, and that has already started now. And the other thing I would like to tell you is that this week is going to be the launch of Herefordshire's Greener Footprints campaign. So look out for that in the Hereford Times, in the press, in social media, and basically pretty much everywhere. So this evening, we're here to stay warm. We're talking gas central heating. And as a country, as a county, only about half of us, I think, are on the gas network, but plenty of other people use LPG. But back in the 70s, what comfort and joy gas central heating brought us. But now we're plagued by these rising prices and that nagging awareness of the carbon implications, not to mention the geopolitical implications of being really gas dependent and not using it particularly efficiently in our not very well insulated homes by and large. So who better to show us how gas heating can be done better than Joe Alsop of the Heating Hub. Joe will be giving us a talk and presentation, and then we'll be around to answer some questions. So you can save your questions till the end, or you can put them in the chat as we go along, and my colleagues Claire and Gordon will be sifting through them. And the rest of us will stay muted during the presentation. So I'm just going to admit our other participants. I'll now be able to do, there they come. And Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you very much for inviting me on to do this. It really is a pleasure to come and talk to people that are engaged with their energy use and kind of want to make a difference. So I'm Jo Alsop, and together with my business partner Caroline, who's also in the photo, I run the Heating Hub, which is a website that offers a lot of free consumer advice for heating and renewable systems. But we also offer a paid for one-to-one advisory service. So we are unique in our impartiality and prioritising efficiency so that all households can reduce their carbon emissions irrespective of their heat source. We've set our own efficiency standards, and we work with a network of independent installers who are working at our efficiency level. Because we're impartial, we have no vested interest in selling you anything. So our advice can be, and often is, keep your boiler, make it more efficient, and invest, for example, in cavity wall insulation. Our role is very much to clear away the marketing blurb and set aside options that might suit the installer to find the right pathway for you. And never has it been so important for consumers to get good, honest advice that is in their interests and in the interests of future generations. We're also very active campaigners for raising standards in our industry. There's a huge skills gap and efficiency gap, and we're working to close it. We make representations to government to tighten up building regulations, and we're about to assist in some important efficiency research. We are pushing for higher installer standards through our website and making consumers aware of what good looks like. There's 108,000 registered gas engineers, less than 1% can work to our level, and that needs to change. We also work collaboratively with other organisations to build a boiler efficiency industry instead of the boiler replacement industry that we have now. Never has it been so important also for businesses to put aside their agendas and come together for the good of the planet. So net zero. We have 28 years and counting to reach net zero. With that comes a carbon budget that requires us to reduce our carbon emissions every day of every year along the way. In other words, we cannot just gear up for a big switchover in 2050. The Committee for Climate Change project that we'll fit 1 million heat pumps a year by 2030. And on a trajectory that hits 600,000 by 2028, we will have still only fitted 3 million heat pumps by the end of the decade. That leaves 19.5 million households still running on gas. In short, we are a gas nation and we cannot avoid it. And boilers already seem dated compared to the magic and shine of a heat pump, with their mysterious use of air or water or earth to heat our homes. And we feel guilty about their operation, but they are going to be with us for at least 15 years. And reducing our gas consumption has a really important part to play in keeping to our 28-year carbon budget. The purpose of tonight's seminar is to help you understand how condensing gas boilers work, so that you can use as little gas as possible and do your bit as we step towards net zero. So first we need to understand the implementation failings of condensing gas boilers. They've been around for about 20 years, but only mandatory in 2005. And they were a great leap forward in efficiency compared to non-condensing boilers, but only if they're set up correctly and only with the right heating control, which, by the way, was not made mandatory at the same time. As such, condensing gas boilers only have the potential to reach a higher efficiency. They are not A-rated out of the box. And a 2009 Energy Savings Trust study found them to be B to E rated in the home. To complicate matters further for consumers, not all boilers are created equal. Despite a blanket A rating, there are what we call high-tech boilers and low-tech boilers. High-tech boilers have a greater efficiency potential, but still require the installer to refine the settings in the home, whilst low-tech boilers, and there are still plenty in the market, offer fewer refinements, and some cannot even be set up with an advanced heating control. But with little or no training for installers to change their working practices or to help them make a distinction between boilers that are genuinely good and the basic models, most fit basic models left at their factory settings, and they rarely condense. Building regs has not been successful in addressing the market failures in spite of these studies. Instead, the market has been permitted to move towards fast-track, next-day boiler installations and fixed-price quotes that see standards slide further. Gas boilers still work even when they're set up quite poorly, and cheap gas has masked inefficiency. But times are changing, and boiler efficiency can mean the difference between heating and eating or eating for households in fuel poverty. An educated guess based on subsequent studies is that most gas boilers are operating 10 to 25% under their A-rated efficiency, enough wasted energy to heat Wales annually. The unnecessarily large carbon footprint resulting from boiler inefficiency is made worse by the over-replacement of gas boilers. Boilers are routinely scrapped at 7 years and sometimes less, and even manufacturers put lifespans at a conservative 10 to 15 years. According to an EU report, boilers should last 22 years. Our analysis of boiler sales versus boiler stock, i.e. the number of homes with a gas boiler per country, found that in the UK, we replace 7.6% of our gas boiler stock annually, or 1.75 million boilers. Germany replaces 5.6% of its stock. The difference sounds small, but if we replace 5.6% of our boilers per annum instead of 7.6, we'd fit 484,000 fewer boilers per year. It is clear we have a boiler replacement industry, not a boiler efficiency industry or a boiler longevity industry. And for those customers approaching us with current boiler models and untapped efficiency potential, our advice is to stop and audit the system. And we hear lots of reasons why consumers are advised to change their boiler prematurely, and I think it's just useful to cover them briefly. Parts are no longer available. It is true that many parts are discontinued on all boilers, but they tend to be non-essential and rarely need changing, but this is not made clear. Many boilers have up to 20 years old have the main parts available that will get your boiler going again. Beyond economic repair, it would have to be multiple component failures for this to be justified. We often hear the repair is £300 to £400 and the replacement is £2,000 to £3,500. but repairs to a well-maintained boiler are cheaper than multiple boiler replacements over its potential 22-year lifespan. Not efficient. Well, a poorly fitted condensing boiler replaced with another poorly fitted condensing boiler will not offer a huge efficiency uplift. It's better to clean the heat exchanger of your existing boiler and invest instead in the overall efficiency of the system. Not a good make of boiler. Installers can be very brand loyal, but since less than 1% are knowledgeable enough to know the difference between a high-tech boiler and a low-tech boiler, they can rarely substantiate their recommendations. And I've seen really good boilers replaced with the lowest of low-tech boilers out of a misplaced sense of brand loyalty. Boilers only last 10 years. This is just not true. And it seems to me that boiler warranty lengths have become tied to boiler life expectancy, so that when the warranty expires, it's time for a new boiler, when this is not the case. And finally, you need a hydrogen-ready boiler. Without getting into this topic at all, but most boilers are only hydrogen mix ready. No boilers are fully ready for a switchover if it ever becomes viable. So our roadmaps to net zero. The UK is on a roadmap to net zero, and households will need their own mini roadmap. And this is how we are helping our customers plan for the future. Having established that your existing boiler has lots of life left in it, we want to be able to make these low cost and no cost changes that will improve its efficiency and keep our boilers running. So where possible, our next heat source is a low carbon heat source and not an interim gas boiler. This is step one in our roadmap to net zero. I mentioned that we need, as a nation, to be reducing our carbon emissions every day of every year to keep to our 28-year carbon budget. And reducing our gas use is a step we can all take very quickly, and the importance of this cannot be overlooked. I've just added some other steps into that slide down the road to a low carbon heat source, and these are the types of issues we're looking at for our customers with our roadmaps. But for tonight's presentation, we're just looking at step one. So just a word on gas boilers. There are three types of boiler: a combi boiler, a system boiler, and a heat-only boiler. And heat-only boilers are sometimes also referred to as conventional or regular boilers. But for the purposes of tonight's discussion, we're going to reduce that to just two types of boiler. A combi that produces hot water instantly, i.e. without a hot water cylinder, and boilers that work with a hot water cylinder. And just FYI, it doesn't matter if your hot water cylinder is vented or unvented for the purposes of this advice. All boilers since 2005 are condensing boilers, and non-condensing boilers lost between 20 to 40% of the energy they use through the flue. And condensing gas boilers recover that heat before it leaves the flue, but only when set up correctly. This graph illustrates that point perfectly. Now, our core principle is that condensing gas boilers are low temperature systems. And whilst they can run at a higher temperature, they are more efficient at a low temperature. They work by recovering the heat that was previously lost through the flue and use it as a preheat for new hot water production. But they can only capture the heat as it turns back into a liquid, i.e. condenses. And this only happens when the return temperature to the boiler is 54 degrees or less. At 54 degrees C, the boiler starts to condense, and it's shown as the dew point on the graph. And a steep upward curve follows that expresses improving efficiency as the return temperature reduces further. Boilers work by sending out hot water to your radiator, called the flow, imparting around 15 to 20 degrees of heat to the room via the radiators, and returning back to the boiler 15 to 20 degrees cooler. The return temperature is important for efficiency. The boiler does not reach its 92 to 94% ERP label efficiency until return temperatures are 45 degrees C. That means that flow temperatures, the temperature leaving the boiler, must be a maximum of 65 degrees C. And this is only if the radiators are balanced to ensure that 20 degrees C is imparted via the radiators. And it can be that due to poor balancing, that the return temperature is higher. Most boilers are left at 80 degrees C, and return temp can be as high as 70 without proper balancing. In other words, they're never condensing. So step 1A in improving the efficiency of your boiler is to lower the flow temperature on your boiler. And this will be possible in most households because we have oversized radiators. According to the Heating and Hot Water Council, households can save up to 6 to 8% on their gas bills just by lowering the flow temperature. Now for combi boilers, boilers without a hot water cylinder, this is really simple. There are 2 dials on the front of your boiler, as shown on that picture, one for heating and one for hot water. And you can reduce the dial on the front of your boiler with a radiator symbol over it to reduce the flow temperature. And you can try and set this at 60 degrees C. Your boiler may need to come on for longer periods if you use a programmable room stat. And how low you can go will depend on the size of your radiators. So bigger radiators, lower flow temperature, higher efficiency, and you will have to trial and error it. If you can stay warm with a flow temperature of 45 degrees C, you are ready for a heat pump. If you have a boiler with a hot water cylinder, it is less straightforward. For S and Y plan systems, which is pretty much every system with a hot water cylinder, the hot water and the heating temperatures are tied together. To maintain 60 degrees C cylinder temperature, which is the guidance given by the Health and Safety Executive to prevent Legionella, flow temperatures have to be set at 70 degrees C. The sad fact is your boiler will rarely condense in this setup. In most cases, the heating and hot water temperature can be separated in order to provide a lower temperature for heating and a higher temperature for hot water. But the advice and the steps are boiler specific. It will need the right heating control and sometimes some replumbing. In other words, you will have to make a small investment to improve efficiency. But please do not take this advice as to remove your cylinder and fit a combi. We will need our hot water cylinders again for low carbon heat sources, and you're in a much better position for it. The step 1B is to fit an advanced control. And it's important to make the distinction between what we call an advanced control and smart controls, as the terms are often interchangeable. Genuine advanced controls speak the same language as the boiler, and they're also known as load or weather compensation controls. And these controls pass information back to the boiler, like a brain for the boiler. And the boiler behaves very differently. It's able to anticipate changes in temperature and react in small increments with much less energy waste. A recent BEMA study found that advanced controls result in a 12% energy saving. We define smart controls as controls with internet capabilities and some automation and optimization AI, but they are still on-off controls and they do not pass information back. Advanced controls may or may not have internet capabilities. Now, despite new regulations in 2018, it's still not mandatory to fit a load or weather compensation control, despite them being the most effective energy saving measure. So step 1C is really a mixture of measures across the heating system. The system here constitutes radiators, TRVs, expansion vessels, pumps, basically everything outside of the boiler. It is always overlooked, and yet it is crucial to boiler efficiency. The size of your radiators, as I've mentioned, will determine how low the flow temperature can be. And remember, the lower the flow temperature, the higher the efficiency. Getting the return temperature as low as possible will aid efficiency. So balancing the system to impart 15 to 20 degrees of heat to the room is very important. Poor balancing and a wrongly set up pump will narrow the DT, the difference between the flow and return, and increase the return temperature, thereby lowering the efficiency. Radiator valves also have an important part to play, not just reducing temperatures in little used rooms, but keeping the system balanced and that differential between flow and return as wide as possible. Some installers are skilled enough to use TRVs for balancing, and others use what are called self-balancing valves, but they are an additional cost. For step 1D, find a good installer. All of the important commissioning of the boiler is within the gift of the installer. And we have a little saying, a boiler is only as good as the installer that fits it. A good installer will adjust the boiler settings, including the pump, to match your heat demand and your radiator sizes, and a good boiler will allow them to do this. This is always the bit that gets chopped off of cheap boiler installations, and yet it is critical to boiler efficiency and longevity. So how do you decide whether your installer is working at this level? You can ask, do you fit load or weather compensation controls? Can you set up my boiler to supply 2 separate temperatures for heating and hot water where I have a cylinder? Which boiler would you recommend and why, and not just rely on brand recommendations? What adjustments do you make to the boiler's parameters to refine it during commissioning? And the answers to that, if you get answers, will be revealing. So this is my final thought. Our industry is back to front, with the onus on you to make the right decision. We should be able to rely on installers to pick us the best boilers, and we should be able to rely on government to regulate out inefficient and dated technology. And we should be able to rely on industry training to prioritise efficiency and longevity. Consumers should not have to take responsibility for making a good purchase or be liable for the consequences of a low-tech boiler left at its factory settings. The industry should be able to deliver for you, but it does not work like that currently. It is the main reason we set up our business, to provide a model of how the industry should work. We're doing what we can to educate consumers, installers and government along the way, and I hope we've given you a good insight into little changes that you can make with your existing system. But until there are blanket solutions, our services are filling that gap. We do charge a fee, and we do save our customers hundreds to thousands in reduced gas bills and poor buying decisions. There is little we haven't heard of, and we always find a solution. And if you feel you need any help on your heating or renewable system, then please do get in touch. Thank you.